In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. We speak often of space marines, of their heroic charges and legendary battles. We marvel at the titans that stride across battlefields, at the guard regiments that hold the line against impossible odds. But tonight, we turn our attention to a different kind of warrior. Not heroes in any traditional sense, not even warriors by choice. Tonight, we speak of the forgotten thousands who toil in the gun decks of Imperial Navy warships, the men and women whose bodies are the machinery that keeps the Imperium's greatest weapons firing. Tonight, we speak of the macro cannon loaders. Close your eyes and imagine, if you will, a cathedral. Not the modest shrines you might find in a hive city, but a true cathedral, soaring hundreds of feet from floor to vaulted ceiling. Gothic architecture reaching toward the heavens, but here, there are no heavens. Here there is only adamantium and ceramite, steel and shadow. The air is thick with the stench of promethium fumes and human sweat, heated to temperatures that would be unbearable if you weren't already numb to the constant discomfort. The sound is a physical thing, a pressure against your eardrums even when the guns are silent. The creak and groan of the ship's hull, the distant thunder of plasma drives, the hiss of hydraulics, and underneath it all, the pulse of 10,000 hearts beating in rhythm with the machine. This is the gun deck of an Imperial Navy warship. This is where the Emperor's wrath is made manifest. And this is where you will likely die. The macro cannons themselves are edifices of destruction that defy easy comprehension. Each weapon is dozens of meters in length, with barrels wide enough that a man could walk through them, though only the cleaning crews ever do so, and they rarely survive the experience. These are not the elegant laser batteries or exotic plasma weapons favored by the Adeptus Mechanicus for their technical purity. No, these are brutal instruments that harken back to an earlier age of warfare, weapons that function on principles humans have understood for millennia, accelerate a massive projectile to tremendous velocity and point it at something you want to cease existing. The scale alone is enough to break the human mind if you let yourself think about it too long. A single shell for a Mars-pattern macro cannon weighs as much as a Land Raider battle tank. Some sources speak of kiloton ordnance, and whether that refers to the mass of the shell or the yield of its explosive warhead, the end result is the same: devastation on a scale that can crack continents and boil oceans. These shells are so massive that they must be moved by teams of dozens, sometimes hundreds, hauled on massive chain hoists and gantries that themselves are the size of small buildings. And you, the loader, are the living link in this chain of destruction. The guns themselves are arranged in batteries, ranks of them stretching down the length of the ship's broadside, each one a towering monument to mankind's capacity for violence. Gantries and walkways crisscross the vast space, connecting the various platforms and maintenance stations. Power lines as thick as your torso snake along the walls and ceiling, feeding the massive electromagnetic accelerators that give the shells their terrible velocity. Cooling pipes hiss with superheated steam, venting excess heat from the firing sequence. Warning lights flash in sequences that might mean something to the tech priests, but are just another source of visual noise to you. And everywhere, there are people. Thousands of them, moving like ants through this mechanical hive. Some wear the relative finery of rated voidsmen, their uniforms marking them as possessing some measure of skill and trust. Others are indentured workers, press-ganged from the slums of hive worlds, or the penal colonies that feed the Imperium's endless appetite for expendable labor. And then there are the servitors, those things that were once human, but have been reduced to biological machines, their minds wiped and replaced with simple programming, their bodies augmented with cybernetic enhancements that make them better suited to their tasks. Sometimes you envy the servitors. At least they don't understand what's happening to them. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's start at the beginning. Let's start with how you came to be here, because very few people choose this life. The Imperium's warships require crews numbering in the tens of thousands, even the hundreds of thousands for the largest battleships. While skilled positions like navigators, astropaths, and warrant officers are carefully recruited and trained, the vast bulk of a ship's crew is drawn from the dregs of imperial society. This is where you come in. Perhaps you were born in the underhive, in one of those sprawling slums that house billions beneath the gleaming spires of the wealthy. Perhaps you were a criminal, though your crime might have been something as simple as being in the wrong place when the press gangs came through. Perhaps you were a political dissident, or someone who angered the wrong noble, or simply unlucky enough to be standing on a street corner when an Imperial Navy captain needed to fill out his crew complement. The Imperium cares nothing for your story. You are a number, a unit of labor to be expended in service to the Emperor. The press gangs move through the lower levels of hive cities like a scythe through wheat. They are led by sergeants at arms, often former Imperial guardsmen, who bring military discipline and a certain detachment from the people they're recruiting. They understand that these conscripts are not their brothers in arms, but raw material to be processed. The press gangs have quotas to fill, and they are not particular about who fills them. Young or old, male or female, healthy or infirm, all are grist for the mill. There is a preference for those, from hive worlds, individuals already inured to the noise and claustrophobic conditions that define life aboard a warship. But beggars cannot be choosers, and the Imperial Navy is always begging for more bodies. The journey to the ship is itself a trial. You are herded into transport shuttles, packed so tightly that standing is barely possible, let alone sitting. The air grows thick and fetid as the hours pass, and by the time you arrive at the orbital station or dockyard where your new home awaits, you are already broken in ways you don't yet understand. This is intentional. The Navy has learned over 10,000 years that it's easier to maintain discipline if you start with people who have already learned helplessness. Your first glimpse of the warship is overwhelming. Even the smallest escort vessels are larger than any building you've ever seen. And if you've been assigned to a cruiser or battleship, the scale defies comprehension. These are ships that measure kilometers from prow to stern, vast cities wrapped in adamantium armor and bristling with weapons. You are marched aboard through massive cargo bays that could swallow entire city blocks, along corridors that stretch into darkness beyond the range of your vision. The ship groans and shifts around you, and you realize with a sick certainty that you are inside a living thing, or something so vast and complex that the difference no longer matters. You are processed like the commodity you now are. Your head is shaved. Your civilian clothes are taken away, replaced with the rough canvas uniform of an indentured worker. If you're lucky, it fits. If you're not, you'll wear it anyway. You are given a number, stenciled onto your uniform and tattooed onto your forearm. Your name still exists, technically, somewhere in the ship's records, but no one will use it. You are your number now. You are assigned to a deck, to a gun battery, to a specific crew. You are given a bunk, a thin pallet in a compartment you share with dozens of others, with a single chemical toilet that never quite works properly. You are told where to report, when to report, and what will happen if you don't. The bosun who delivers these instructions has a whip coiled at his belt, and his eyes suggest he would welcome the opportunity to use it. And then you are taken to the gun deck, and you understand that everything up until this point was merely prologue. The sheer scale of the macro cannon battery is your first lesson in the Imperium's capacity for excess. The main housing is a hall that stands hundreds of feet high, so tall that the ceiling is lost in shadow despite the harsh worklight scattered throughout. From this ceiling hangs the macro cannon itself, suspended by massive chains and hydraulic arms that allow it to be elevated or depressed by tiny degrees. The barrel is easily 50 meters long, possibly more, and wide enough that you could drive a chimera transport through it if you were so inclined. The breech, mechanism at the rear of the gun, is a complex edifice of gears, pistons, and locking mechanisms, each component larger than a man. Tech priests in their red robes move along the gantries surrounding the weapon, tending to its machine spirit, with oils and prayers, ensuring that this holy instrument of the Emperor's will remains functional. Below the gun, on the main deck level, is where you will spend most of your waking hours. This is the loading floor, and it is a space defined by brutal functionality. Massive cranes and chain hoists dominate the center of the room, designed to lift the enormous shells from the magazine levels below. The floor is stained with decades of spilled promethium and human blood, the residue of countless loading cycles and all the accidents they entail. The air here is thick with heat rising from the gun barrel above, especially after a firing sequence. And the smell is a combination of hot metal, chemical propellant, and human sweat that you will never quite get used to, though it will become as familiar as breathing. The shells themselves are stored in the munitorum, levels below the gun deck proper. These are vast chambers filled with ordnance, each shell resting in its cradle, each one maintained and blessed by junior tech priests and engineers who check for any sign of degradation or impurity. The journey from munitorum to gun deck is itself a major undertaking, requiring the coordination of multiple crews working in concert. Shells must be transferred onto the massive chain-driven elevators that connect the magazine levels to the gun deck, then moved along tracks set into the floor to the loading position beneath the gun. Every step of this process is dangerous, as a dropped shell or a chain giving way under the tremendous weight could kill dozens in an instant. You learn the hierarchy quickly, because your survival depends on understanding your place within it. At the top of your immediate world is the gun captain, a warrant officer who has earned his position through decades of service, working his way up through every rating and position in the gun crew. The gun captain is responsible for everything that happens with his weapon, from the mundane maintenance to the split-second decisions during combat. He is judge, executioner, and occasionally savior to the hundreds of crew members under his command. His word is law within the boundaries of his battery, and to question him is to invite punishment that ranges from a flogging to being thrown into the brig, or worse, being assigned to one of the even more dangerous duties elsewhere in the ship. Beneath the gun captain are the various petty officers and senior ratings who form the middle management of the gun crew. There are breach supervisors who oversee the opening and closing mechanisms, shell handlers who coordinate the movement of ammunition, and quality checkers who inspect each shell before it's loaded. These are men and women who have survived long, enough to gain some measure of skill and responsibility, and they lord their small amount of authority over those below them with varying degrees of mercy or cruelty. Then there are the voidsmen, the rated crew members who perform the skilled tasks required to keep the gun operational. These are the people who actually work the massive pinions and chains that open the breech, who operate the cranes and hoists, who align the shells with the barrel and signal when everything is ready for the loading sequence. They are skilled laborers, and while their lives are hard and dangerous, they at least have the small comfort of knowing that their training makes them less immediately replaceable than those below them. And below them, at the very bottom of this hierarchy, are people like you, the indentured workers, the press-ganged unfortunates, the slave labor that forms the foundation of the entire operation. You have no skills that matter here, no training that would mark you as valuable. Your job is to provide the raw muscle that moves the shells from the elevators to the loading positions, to haul on the chains and turn the flywheels that lack servitor or mechanical assistance, to clean up the spent casings and debris after each firing cycle. Your job is to break your body in service to a weapon that will kill you without hesitation if you make a single mistake. The work itself is a brutal rhythm that becomes the metronome of your life. When the call comes for the guns to prepare for action, everything accelerates. The bosuns move through the crew quarters, driving everyone to their stations with shouts and blows. You scramble to the gun deck, joining the dozens of others assigned to your particular weapon. The gun captain is already there, checking the status reports from his subordinates, ensuring that everything is ready. The air crackles with tension and anticipation, because you all know what's coming. The loading cycle begins with opening the breech. This is a task that requires a team working in perfect coordination, hauling on massive chains that engage the locking mechanisms. The breech itself weighs several tons, and even with mechanical assistance, It requires the strength of many men to move. You throw your weight onto the chain alongside a dozen others, feeling the metal links bite into your palms through the thin gloves you're issued. Someone calls the count, and you pull in unison, muscles burning, feet slipping on the slick deck plates. The breech groans and shifts, massive gears turning with a sound like grinding thunder, until finally it swings open, exposing the chamber within. The spent casing from the previous shot must be extracted. This is often one of the most dangerous parts of the process, because the casing is still hot enough to cause severe burns or even ignite the promethium residue that coats everything on the gun deck. A specialized crew, protected by thick gloves and heavy aprons, moves forward with long poles and hooks to grab the casing and pull it free. The metal casing, easily the size of a small truck, slides out with a screech of tortured metal and crashes onto the waiting cradle with the impact you feel through the deck plates. The casing is immediately doused with chemical suppressant to cool it down and prevent any lingering propellant from igniting. While the casing is being removed, the cleaning crew is already preparing. These poor souls, often the newest recruits or those being punished for some infraction, must enter the breach chamber itself and scrub away the residue left by the previous firing. They work frantically under the watchful eye of a junior tech priest or engineer who checks for any damage or impurity that might affect the next shot. This is not a position you want because the chamber is still radiating heat, and the chemical residue is toxic enough that you'll be coughing up blood for days afterward if the ventilators aren't working properly, which they often aren't. Once the chamber is deemed clean, the next shell is brought into position. This is where you earn whatever pittance they're paying you, though you'll never actually see that money. The shell sits on its transport cradle, and it must be moved from the main deck to the loading position directly beneath the breach. This requires teams hauling on chains attached to the cradle, pulling it along the tracks set into the floor. The shell weighs as much as a Land Raider, which means it weighs approximately 60 tons. And even with the wheels on the cradle reducing friction, it takes the coordinated effort of 50 or more workers to move it into position. You take your place on one of the chains. Your hands are already bleeding from previous cycles, the rough metal having worn through your gloves and then your skin. You can see similar injuries on everyone around you, bloody palms gripping chains that will drink more blood before the shift is over. The bosun calls the count, and you pull. Every muscle in your body engages at once, your legs driving against the deck plates, your back arching, your shoulders screaming. The chain digs into your hands, and you feel skin tear, but you don't let go because letting go could cause the chain to slip, which could shift the load, which could cause the shell to fall, which would kill everyone in the immediate vicinity and possibly trigger a chain reaction that would detonate the entire magazine. The shell moves slowly, painfully slowly, inching along the tracks. You're not even sure how far you're pulling, because your vision has narrowed to the chain in your hands and the back of the person in front of you. Someone stumbles, and for a heart-stopping moment, the load shifts. People scream, but then servitors at the side stations engage their hydraulic stabilizers, and the shell steadies. You keep pulling. Your lungs burn, your muscles burn, everything burns. And finally, mercifully, the call comes to halt. The shell is in position. Now comes the most technically complex part of the loading sequence. The shell must be elevated from its cradle and aligned with the barrel of the gun. This is accomplished through a combination of massive chain hoists and hydraulic lifts, operated by the skilled voidsman. You watch, gasping for breath, as the shell is raised slowly, carefully, guided by crews on multiple platforms who signal corrections to ensure perfect alignment. A misalignment of even a few centimeters could cause the shell to jam in the barrel, which would require disassembling half the gun to fix, and would likely result in the entire crew being flogged for incompetence. The shell rises and finally slots into position at the mouth of the chamber. The gun captain inspects it personally, checking that the shell is properly aligned and that all safety mechanisms are engaged. He signals his approval, and the loading crews move into action. More chains, more pulling. and the shell slides into the chamber with a deep, resonant boom that you feel in your chest. The breach crew is already moving, hauling on their chains to swing the massive breach closed. The locking mechanisms engage with a series of heavy clangs that echo through the gun deck. The tech priest intones a prayer to the machine spirit, anointing the sealed breach with sacred oils. The gun captain reports ready to fire, and then you wait. Sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. The enemy ship might not be in range yet. The order to fire might be held while the ship maneuvers into position. You stand there, or squat if you dare, trying to conserve what little energy you have left, knowing that as soon as this gun fires, you'll have to do it all again. Your hands throb, your back aches. You're so thirsty that your tongue feels like leather, but the water rations don't come until the end of the shift, and the shift doesn't end until the engagement is over. When the order to fire finally comes, it arrives through the Vox system built into the gun deck. The gun captain confirms receipt of the order, and then, without ceremony, he activates the firing mechanism. What happens next is something that cannot adequately be described, only experienced. The macro cannon discharges with a sound that is beyond sound, a physical force that seems to compress the very air in your lungs. The entire ship shudders from the recoil, despite the shock absorption systems built into the gun mounts. The barrel above you glows cherry red from the heat of the discharge, and you can smell the ozone and propellant fumes even through the ventilation systems. If you were foolish enough to be looking directly at the gun when it fired, you would be blinded, at least temporarily, by the flash of light that accompanies the ignition sequence. The shell, all 60 tons of it, has been accelerated to velocities measured in thousands of kilometers per second, possibly even a significant fraction of light speed depending on the type of macro cannon and the power of its electromagnetic accelerators. It is now hurtling through the void toward an enemy ship tens of thousands of kilometers away. If it hits, it will punch through void shields and armor plating, its explosive warhead detonating inside the enemy vessel with enough force to vaporize entire decks and everyone on them. But you don't think about that. You can't afford to think about that. Because the breach is already opening, the spent casing is already being extracted, and you have to do it all again. A typical engagement might require a gun crew to complete this cycle 30 times, 50 times, more. For hours on end, you will haul shells and pull chains, and if you slow down, if you show weakness, the bosuns will drive you harder with their whips and their boots. People collapse from exhaustion. They are dragged aside and replaced with fresh bodies from the reserve crews kept on hand for exactly this purpose. People die, crushed by chains or shells or machinery, and their bodies are dragged aside and recorded in the casualty lists that no one but the administratum will ever read. You keep working because stopping means you'll be next. The living conditions for the indentured workers are exactly what you would expect in a system that views human life as the cheapest commodity in the Imperium. Your sleeping quarters are located in what are euphemistically called the underdecks, vast dormitories that house hundreds or even thousands of workers in conditions that would be considered inhumane by any reasonable standard, which is precisely why they are the standard in the Imperial Navy. The bunks are stacked 3 or 4 high, narrow pallets with thin mattresses that offer minimal comfort against the hard metal frames. The space between bunks is barely sufficient to stand, and you must shuffle sideways if you want to move down the rows. There is no privacy. The concept doesn't exist in the underdecks. You sleep surrounded by hundreds of other bodies, breathing in air that has been recycled too many times through filters that can't quite keep up with the biological demands of the crew. The smell is indescribable, a combination of human sweat, chemical cleaners, and the ever-present taint of promethium fumes that seeps through every level of the ship. You grow accustomed to it because you must, but it never stops being unpleasant. In the few hours you're allowed for sleep, the sounds of hundreds of people moving, breathing, snoring, crying, and occasionally dying create a constant background noise that makes true rest nearly impossible. The sanitation facilities are woefully inadequate. A single chemical toilet is shared between 10 or more workers, and the queue is constant. The toilets themselves are poorly maintained, often backed up or overflowing, adding to the general misery of life in the underdecks. There are communal washing stations, if they can be called that, where a series of cold water taps allow you to rinse off the day's accumulation of grime and blood. But water is rationed, and your allotted time at the taps is measured in minutes, never enough to feel truly clean. Many workers simply stop bothering after a while, accepting the permanent layer of filth that coats their skin as another aspect of their new existence. The food is barely worthy of the name. You receive 2 meals per day, served in vast mess halls where thousands of workers eat in shifts. The rations consist primarily of corpse starch, a protein-rich paste made from recycled organic matter that you absolutely do not want to think too hard about. It is grey, tasteless, and has the consistency of wet clay. Sometimes it's supplemented with preserved vegetables that have been in storage so long that their original form is difficult to determine, or with a thin gruel made from grain that's barely fit for human consumption. The calories are sufficient to keep you alive and working, but just barely. Malnutrition is common among the indentured crews, and you can see it in the sunken eyes and hollow cheeks of those who have been aboard for any length of time. Water rations are strictly controlled. You receive a standard allotment each day, measured out by machines that don't care if you're dying of thirst. It's never enough, especially after a long shift on the gun deck, where the heat and physical exertion leave you desperately dehydrated. Workers sometimes trade their corpse starch rations for additional water, choosing to deal with hunger rather than the maddening thirst that comes from working in the infernal heat of the gun deck. The ship's water supply is recycled through purification systems that are, like everything else on an Imperial Navy warship, aging and imperfect. The water always has a faint metallic taste and occasional chemical tang that suggests the purification process hasn't quite eliminated everything it should. There is no medical care, not really. Oh, the ship has medic facilities, but those are reserved for the officers and skilled crew members whose training represents a significant investment of time and resources. For indentured workers, medical attention extends to having a corpsman look at your injury, maybe splash some antiseptic on it if it looks infected, and sending you back to work unless you're literally dying, in which case they'll move you aside so you can do it more conveniently. Broken bones are set with whatever materials are at hand, if they're set at all. Infections are common and often fatal. Radiation exposure from working near the guns or the plasma drives accumulates over time, causing sickness and organ failure that the medical staff can't or won't treat. You learn to work through pain, because showing weakness means you're likely to be assigned to even worse duties or simply disposed of when the ship makes its next port call. The mental toll is harder to quantify, but no less devastating. You exist in a state of constant fear and exhaustion. Every moment on the gun deck carries the potential for sudden death. Every interaction with your overseers is an opportunity for punishment. There is no escape, no relief, no hope of anything better. Some workers simply break, their minds unable to cope with the endless brutality. These unfortunates are usually transformed into servitors, their broken consciousness wiped and replaced with simple programming, their bodies augmented to make them more useful. It's considered a mercy in some ways, and there are whispers among the crew that some workers deliberately seek this fate as the only escape from their suffering. Recreation, if it can be called that, consists of a few hours between shifts where you're not actively working or sleeping. Some workers gather in small groups, forming bonds of survival and companionship. They share stories, real or imagined, of lives they left behind or places they hope to see someday, though everyone knows that leaving the ship is not an option. Some turn to the Imperial Creed, finding solace in prayer and the belief that their suffering has meaning in the Emperor's grand design. Small shrines appear in corners of the underdecks, tended by self-appointed preachers who lead impromptu services. The bosuns generally tolerate this as long as it doesn't interfere with work schedules, understanding that giving the crew some outlet for their despair reduces the likelihood of mutiny. Others find escape in whatever mind-altering substances they can acquire through the ship's black market. Every warship has an unofficial economy running beneath the official hierarchy, where workers trade the few possessions they have or steal from the ship's stores to obtain obscura, recaf, or even more exotic substances smuggled aboard during port calls. The bosuns know about this trade and generally tolerate it as long as it remains manageable. A crew that's slightly intoxicated is easier to control than a crew that's contemplating mutiny, and the substances help numb the workers to the horrors of their existence. Of course, addiction is common, and an addicted worker is an inefficient worker. But efficiency has never been the Imperial Navy's primary concern when it comes to indentured labor. There are always more bodies to press into service. The discipline system aboard an Imperial Navy warship is brutal by design. The Navy has learned across 10 millennia of warfare that fear is the most effective tool for controlling large numbers of potentially rebellious crew members who have every reason to hate their situation. The bosuns and sergeants-at-arms are the enforcers of this system, and they perform their duties with a thoroughness that borders on enthusiasm. Flogging is the standard punishment for minor infractions. Reporting late to your station, failing to properly salute a superior, showing insufficient deference to a tech priest, any of these can earn you a dozen lashes from the bosun's whip. The floggings are conducted publicly, usually during shift changes when the maximum number of crew members can be assembled to watch. You are stripped to the waist and tied to a whipping post that's a permanent fixture in every major crew area. The bosun applies the lash with practiced efficiency, and you quickly learn not to cry out because that's viewed as weakness and will likely earn you additional strokes. The wounds from a flogging take weeks to heal, and they heal badly, leaving scars that layer on top of previous scars until your back becomes a roadmap of every mistake you've made since coming aboard. More serious infractions carry correspondingly harsher punishments. Theft from the ship's stores might earn you a month in the brig, kept in a tiny cell barely large enough to lie down in, fed starvation rations while you contemplate your crime. Striking a superior, even in self-defense, is likely to result in you being assigned to a punishment detail in one of the ship's most hazardous areas. Perhaps you'll be sent to work in the plasma drive compartments, where the radiation levels are high enough that you'll be dead within weeks. Perhaps you'll be assigned to the void shield generators, those hellish compartments the size of small towns that stink of ozone and where unpredictable arcs of electricity can kill you in an instant. Perhaps you'll be sent to repair hull breaches during combat, working in a vacuum suit that's been patched so many times it's more patch than original material, knowing that if the suit fails or if enemy fire catches you, you'll die in the cold void with no one to mourn you. The ultimate punishment, reserved for mutiny or sabotage or other crimes that threaten the ship itself, is conversion into a servitor. You are taken to the tech priests, who lobotomize you with mechanical precision, scooping out everything that made you human and replacing it with simple programming. Your body is augmented with cybernetics, enhancing your strength or durability or whatever quality makes you most useful for your new function. And then you are put to work, your consciousness reduced to a dim awareness that can follow simple commands but can no longer form thoughts or feel emotions or remember what you once were. It is the ultimate expression of the Imperium's philosophy. Even in death, or something very much like death, you can still serve. The overseers understand that this system only works if it's applied consistently and visibly. Punishment must be public, brutal, and frequent enough that everyone is constantly reminded of the consequences of stepping out of line. But it also can't be so overwhelming that it breaks the entire crew, because a broken crew is an inefficient crew, and even the Imperial Navy has standards it must maintain. It's a careful balance, one that the bosuns and sergeants-at-arms have perfected over countless generations of service. The rate at which gun crews die is one of the defining characteristics of service in the macro cannon batteries, and it's the single most commonly cited statistic when discussing the brutality of life in the Imperial Navy. We are told, repeatedly in the law, that life expectancy among gun crews is often measured in weeks, not years, not even months. Weeks. This statistic seems almost unbelievable until you understand the sheer number of ways a gun crew member can die, and then it becomes not only believable, but inevitable. The most common cause of death is simple industrial accident. The machinery involved in loading and firing a macro cannon is massive, powerful, and unforgiving. A chain snapping under tension can whip across the gun deck with enough force to cut a man in half. A shell slipping from its cradle can crush everyone underneath it. The breech mechanism, if it fails while closing, can trap workers inside the chamber, where they'll be incinerated when the gun fires. The recoil from the gun's discharge, despite all the shock absorption systems, can knock workers off elevated platforms, sending them plummeting to the deck below. The cleaning crews who enter the still-hot breech chamber suffer from burns and toxic exposure that accumulates with each cleaning cycle until their bodies simply give out. The heat is a constant killer. The macro cannons generate tremendous thermal energy when they fire, and this heat radiates throughout the gun deck. During extended engagements, when the guns are firing continuously for hours, the temperature on the gun deck can rise to levels that are barely compatible with human survival. Workers collapse from heat exhaustion, and if they're not dragged away quickly enough, they simply cook where they fall. The ventilation systems struggle to keep up, circulating air that feels like it's being drawn from a furnace. Dehydration claims dozens in every major engagement, and the water rations are never sufficient to compensate for the fluid loss from hours of hard labor in extreme heat. Radiation is a slower but no less certain killer. The electromagnetic accelerators that give macro cannons their power generate hard radiation as a byproduct, and the shielding is never quite adequate. Workers on the gun deck are exposed to this radiation with every firing cycle, and the exposure accumulates over time. At first, you might only notice fatigue and nausea. Then your hair starts falling out. Your gums bleed. You develop strange rashes that won't heal. Eventually, your bone marrow stops producing blood cells, or you develop cancers that spread through your body like wildfire, or your organs simply shut down from the accumulated damage. The ship's medici staff can identify radiation sickness easily enough, but there's no treatment for it, not for indentured workers. You're simply worked until you die, and then your corpse is recycled through the ship's systems, possibly ending up as part of the next batch of corpse starch rations. Combat brings its own particular horrors. When the ship engages enemy vessels, the gun deck becomes a priority target. Enemy fire that penetrates the void shields and hull armor can detonate inside the gun deck, killing dozens or hundreds in the resulting explosion. Hits to the magazine levels below can trigger chain reactions that destroy entire sections of the ship. Boarding actions can reach the gun deck, and while the armsmen and voidsmen at arms are supposed to repel boarders, in reality, the indentured workers are often pressed into service as emergency defenders, handed crude weapons and told to hold the line against enemy forces that are better armed, better trained, and motivated by the knowledge that they're fighting for survival. Your life expectancy in a boarding action is measured in minutes if you're unlucky enough to be in the path of the assault. Even in the aftermath of successful engagements, the gun deck claims lives. Damaged machinery continues to operate because the ship needs its weapons functional, and that means work crews are sent to effect repairs while the systems are still hot and potentially unstable. Unexploded ordnance from enemy fire must be cleared, a task that often ends with the workers doing the clearing being vaporized when the ordnance decides to explode after all. Damaged power lines arc and spark, electrocuting anyone who touches them. Ruptured coolant pipes spray superheated fluid that can strip flesh from bone. The gun deck never stops being dangerous, even when the fighting is over. And then there are the more insidious killers. Disease spreads quickly in the cramped, unsanitary conditions of the underdecks. Respiratory infections, dysentery, and various exotic plagues brought aboard from foreign worlds burn through the crew with regularity. The ship's medici staff makes token efforts at quarantine, but they're fighting a losing battle against conditions that are ideal for the spread of contagion. Workers sicken and die, and their bunks are immediately filled with new bodies, who contract whatever killed their predecessors and continue the cycle. Starvation and malnutrition weaken everyone over time. The rations are calculated to keep you alive and working, but they don't account for the tremendous caloric expenditure required by the physical labor on the gun deck. You're burning more energy than you're consuming, and over weeks and months, your body begins to cannibalize itself. Muscle wastes away, bones become brittle, your immune system falters. Eventually, you lack the strength to perform your duties, and at that point, you become a liability. The Navy doesn't waste resources on workers who can't work, and you'll be disposed of one way or another. Suicide is more common than the officers like to admit. Some workers simply can't cope with the knowledge that this is their life now, that there is no escape, no hope of anything better. They find ways to end it. A leap from an elevated platform, deliberately positioning yourself in the path of moving machinery, refusing to eat or drink until your body shuts down. The bosuns do their best to prevent these deaths, not out of compassion, but because losing workers to suicide is wasteful, but they can't watch everyone all the time. The bodies are quietly removed, marked down in the casualty lists as industrial accidents, and life on the gun deck continues. The replacement system is grimly efficient. Every Imperial Navy warship maintains a reserve pool of workers, excess capacity that can be drawn upon when casualties mount. When a gun crew is depleted below minimum operational levels, workers from the reserve pool are assigned to fill the gaps. These new workers receive minimal training, often just a few hours of instruction on basic safety procedures and their specific duties, before being thrown into the rotation. The learning curve is steep and bloody, but it doesn't matter because there are always more workers waiting in the reserve pool, and the ship is always acquiring new recruits through press gangs operating wherever the ship makes port. The cycle is self-perpetuating. Workers die, new workers are brought in, they die, more workers are brought in. The Imperium has an effectively infinite supply of human beings to draw upon, entire hive worlds, where billions live in conditions barely better than those on the gun deck, and the Navy recruiters know exactly where to find them. The press gangs never want for candidates, whether volunteers desperate for escape from their current circumstances or conscripts who have no say in the matter. The machine grinds on, consuming human lives with the same mechanical indifference as the macro cannons consume their shells. And yet, impossibly, some workers survive. They learn the tricks of the trade, the small techniques that might give them an edge. They learn to position themselves on the chains where the strain is slightly less. They learn which overseers are slightly less brutal and try to stay in their crews. They learn to move with economy of motion, conserving energy whenever possible. They learn to sleep instantly whenever they have the chance, to eat every bite of their rations even when their stomach rebels, to drink every drop of their water allotment. They learn which injuries can be worked through and which require medical attention, even if that attention is minimal. They become veterans, recognizable by their scars and their 1,000-yard stares, and the newer workers look to them for guidance, even though everyone knows the veteran's survival is probably just luck rather than skill. Battle stations. The call comes through the Vox system, echoing through every deck and compartment of the ship. It's the sound that defines your existence, the summons that you've learned to dread because you know exactly what it means. Within seconds, the relative quiet of the gun deck erupts into controlled chaos. Bosuns are shouting, driving their crews toward their assigned positions. Armsmen rush through the corridors, sealing blast doors and checking atmospheric integrity. Tech priests hurry to their stations, preparing to monitor the machine spirits of their weapons. And you run, because responding slowly to battle stations is an offense that will earn you a flogging at best. The gun deck transforms when the ship goes to battle stations. Work lights shift to combat lighting, bathing everything in a harsh red glow that's supposed to preserve night vision. though you're not sure why that matters when you're hundreds of meters inside an armored hull. Warning klaxons blare, their harsh tones cutting through the normal background noise of the ship. Vox speakers crackle with status reports and orders from the bridge, though most of it is incomprehensible to you. Technical jargon that only the gun captain and his senior crew need to understand. Blast doors begin closing, dividing the gun deck into separate sections that can be sealed off if one area is compromised. You've heard stories of gun crews being sealed into burning sections, left to die because opening the doors would compromise the ship, and you try very hard not to think about those stories. You reach your assigned position and join the rest of your crew. The gun captain is already there, receiving targeting information from the bridge and translating it into firing solutions. The tech priests are conducting last-minute rituals, anointing the gun with sacred oils and chanting prayers to the machine spirit. The shell handlers are bringing the first round up from the magazine, and you can already see the massive form of the shell rising on the elevator, even larger than usual because the captain has ordered armor-piercing rounds for this engagement. These shells are heavier, harder to move, and the loading cycle will take longer, but they're designed to punch through the heaviest armor, and apparently the enemy we're facing needs that level of firepower. The timing of void combat is strange. Ships engage at ranges measured in tens of thousands of kilometers, which means there's often a significant delay between when the guns fire and when the shells actually strike their targets. The gun crews don't get to see the results of their work. You load the shell, the gun fires, and somewhere far away, maybe 30 seconds or a minute later, your shell either hits the enemy vessel or misses and sails off into the void. You have no way of knowing which, no feedback except what filters down through the command structure. Sometimes the gun captain will announce a hit, his voice carrying satisfaction that trickles down to the crew, but mostly you work in ignorance, loading and firing, trusting that someone, somewhere, knows whether you're actually accomplishing anything. The first firing cycle proceeds according to the training you received. The breach opens with its characteristic grinding sound. The chamber is empty because this is the first shot of the engagement, so there's no spent casing to extract. The cleaning crew does a quick inspection anyway, checking for any debris or impurity that might have accumulated since the last engagement. The tech priest nods approval, and the shell is brought into position. You take your place on the loading chains, your hands already aching in anticipation of what's to come. The count is called, and you pull. The shell moves, reluctantly at first, then with gathering momentum. It's heavier than the standard shells you've been training with, and you can feel the difference in the strain on your muscles. Someone behind you is whimpering with effort, a sound that's barely audible over the general noise of the gun deck. You grit your teeth and pull harder. The shell reaches its loading position, is elevated, slots into the chamber. The breach closes. The gun captain signals ready to fire. And then, without warning, the macro cannon discharges. You thought you were prepared for the sound. You thought your previous experience had inured you to it. You were wrong. The sound of a macro cannon firing in combat is qualitatively different from the training exercises, perhaps because you're so much more aware of what it means. This shell is being fired at an actual enemy who is firing back. That enemy's shells are hurtling toward your ship right now, and if one of them hits the gun deck, you and everyone around you will die instantly. The knowledge adds a visceral edge to the experience, transforming the physical shock of the discharge into something that feels almost like terror. The breach opens. The spent casing is extracted, still glowing red with residual heat. The cleaning crew rushes in, and you can see steam rising from their protective gear as they scrub frantically at the chamber. The next shell is already on its way up from the magazine. You barely have time to catch your breath before you're pulling on the chains again, and again, and again. The rhythm establishes itself, brutal and relentless, and you fall into it because there's no alternative. 20 minutes into the engagement, the first casualty occurs in your crew. One of the breach handlers misjudges his timing and gets caught when the massive breach mechanism swings closed. The sound of bones breaking is audible even over the general noise. a wet crunch that makes your stomach lurch. The man screams, a sound that continues for several seconds until it abruptly cuts off. You don't see what happens to him because you're already pulling on the chains for the next loading cycle. But you glimpse servitors dragging something that might be a body away from the gun. A replacement breech handler is already moving into position. The loading cycle continues without pause. The heat is building. Each firing cycle adds more thermal energy to the gun and the surrounding environment. The ventilation systems are struggling, circulating air that's so hot it feels like breathing fire. Sweat pours down your face and back, soaking through your uniform. Your hands are slipping on the chains despite your gloves, and you have to grip harder, which means your palms are tearing open again, adding blood to the mix of sweat and grime. The worker next to you collapses suddenly, just drops to the deck like a puppet with cut strings. Heat exhaustion probably, or maybe a heart attack from the combination of heat, exertion, and stress. You don't break stride. You can't. The loading cycle continues. The engagement grinds on for hours. You lose count of how many shells you've loaded. Your body is past the point of pain, operating on some combination of adrenaline, fear, and muscle memory. You're not even sure you're conscious in any meaningful sense. You just pull the chains when someone tells you to pull, move to the next station when someone tells you to move, and try not to think about anything beyond the next few seconds. Around you, the gun deck is a scene of organized chaos. Every gun in the battery is firing in sequence, creating a rolling thunder that never stops. Shell casings are piling up faster than they can be removed. The chemical smell of propellant is so thick you can taste it. And through it all, the tech priests move like red-robed ghosts, tending to their weapons with a devotion that borders on religious ecstasy, which perhaps it is. Then, something hits the ship. You feel it through the deck plates before you hear it. A massive vibration that runs through the entire structure of the vessel. The lights flicker. Somewhere, alarms are blaring. The Vox crackles with damage reports, talking about breaches in sections you've never heard of, casualties mounting, void shields compromised. The gun captain shouts something about maintaining rate of fire, and you realize with sick certainty that you're going to keep loading shells even if the entire ship is coming apart around you. Because that's what the gun crews do. That's what you do. You load shells until the enemy is destroyed or until you're destroyed, and there are no other options. A second impact, closer this time. The entire gun deck lurches, throwing people off their feet. You manage to grab onto the loading chain, the rough metal biting into your torn palms, holding yourself steady while others fall. One of the shells on its transport cradle breaks free from its restraints and begins rolling. People scatter, screaming because a loose shell on the gun deck can kill dozens if it collides with something. Servitors move to intercept it, their mechanical strength allowing them to absorb the impact and bring the shell to a halt. Several servitors are crushed in the process, their bodies breaking under tons of momentum, but they succeed in stopping the shell before it can cause worse damage. The remains of the servitors are pushed aside. The shell is secured. The loading cycle continues. You don't know how long the engagement lasts. Time has become meaningless, compressed into an eternal present of loading shells and surviving. But eventually, impossibly, it ends. The order to cease fire comes through the Vox, and suddenly the gun deck is quiet, or what passes for quiet after hours of continuous macro cannon discharge. The ringing in your ears is so severe that you can barely hear anything else. The gun captain is saying something, giving orders about securing the weapons and beginning damage assessment. You don't care. You collapse where you stand, your body finally giving out now that the immediate crisis is over. Around you, the gun deck looks like a battlefield, which in many ways it is. Bodies are scattered across the deck plates, some dead, some merely unconscious, some in states that make it unclear which category they fall into. Blood and various other fluids have mixed with the omnipresent grime to create a slick that makes walking treacherous. Shell casings are piled in great heaps, still radiating heat that distorts the air above them. Machinery is damaged, some of it catastrophically, and you can already see tech priests assessing the repairs that will be needed before the next engagement. The smell is indescribable, a combination of hot metal, chemical propellant, human sweat and waste, and the distinctive odor of burnt flesh. The casualty reports will come later, tallied with mechanical precision and recorded in logs that no one but the administratum will ever read. Your crew started this engagement with 120 workers. You estimate that perhaps 80 are still functional, though many of those are wounded to some degree. 40 dead or incapacitated in a single engagement. The gun captain seems satisfied with this ratio, which tells you everything you need to know about what's considered acceptable losses in the Imperial Navy. But you survived. Against all odds, through some combination of luck and reflexes and sheer stubborn refusal to die, you survived. You're still alive, still breathing, still able to think and feel and hate this existence. And you know, with absolute certainty, that you'll have to do it all again. Maybe in hours, maybe in days, but eventually the call to battle stations will come again, and you'll run to your position again, and you'll load shells again, because that's what gun crews do. That's what you do now. It's all you do. It's all you'll ever do until the day you don't survive, and someone else takes your place on the loading chains, and the cycle continues. There are moments, rare and brief, when you allow yourself to think about the broader implications of your existence. You are one indentured worker on one gun crew on one ship in the Imperial Navy. There are dozens of gun crews on this ship alone, each one staffed by hundreds of workers like you. There are thousands of ships in the Imperial Navy, spread across the vastness of the galaxy, each one carrying its own complement of gun crews. The number becomes astronomical quickly. Millions of human beings whose entire existence consists of loading shells into macro cannons, dying at rates that would be considered catastrophic in any other context, and being replaced with more bodies drawn from the inexhaustible supply that the Imperium maintains. And the truly horrifying part is that this is considered normal. This is how the Imperium works. The officers and nobles who command these vessels view their gun crews as they might view any other consumable resource. You are ammunition, in a sense, less valuable than the shells you load, because shells are expensive and difficult to manufacture, while human beings are cheap and easy to acquire. The tech priests are more concerned with the well-being of the guns than with the people who operate them, because the guns represent irreplaceable technology, while the people are, well, replaceable. Even the Imperial Creed, which theoretically holds that all human life is sacred because all humans are the Emperor's subjects, makes exceptions for those whose suffering serves the greater good. And what greater good could there be than maintaining the warships that protect humanity from the countless threats lurking in the galaxy? You sometimes wonder about the people you're killing when your gun fires. Each shell that finds its target strikes an enemy vessel, punching through armor and exploding inside their ship. Are there gun crews on that ship? Indentured workers just like you, hauling shells and pulling chains in conditions just as brutal as yours. When your shell detonates in their gun deck, vaporizing hundreds of them in an instant, are you killing people who are fundamentally different from you, or are you killing yourself, metaphorically speaking? Does the enemy loader, in his last instant before oblivion, think about the loader who fired the shell that killed him? Does he rage against his fate, or is he grateful for an end to his suffering? These are dangerous thoughts, the kind that can get you reported to the commissars if you voice them aloud. Questioning the righteousness of the Imperium's cause, sympathizing with the enemy, expressing doubt about the value of your sacrifice. These are all signs of potential heresy or cowardice, and the punishments for such things are severe. So you keep these thoughts to yourself, locked away in the private spaces of your mind where the overseers cannot reach. But they're there, gnawing at you, adding a layer of existential horror to the physical brutality of your daily existence. Some workers find solace in the belief that their suffering has meaning. The priests who move through the crew quarters, ministering to the spiritual needs of the faithful, preach that every shell loaded is a prayer, every drop of sweat shed is an offering to the Emperor. Every death in service to the Navy is a martyrdom that will be rewarded in the afterlife. They speak of the gun crews as warriors, no different from the Space Marines or Imperial Guard, fighting the eternal war against the darkness that threatens to consume humanity. Your pain is temporary, they say, but your contribution to the Imperium is eternal. You have been blessed with the opportunity to serve, and you should embrace this opportunity with joy and gratitude. You want to believe them. You desperately want to believe that this nightmare has meaning, that your suffering is not random and pointless, but part of some greater design that you cannot comprehend from your limited perspective. But it's hard to maintain faith when you're standing in a pool of your own blood on the gun deck, when you're watching another worker get crushed by machinery, when you're eating corpse starch that might be made from your dead comrades, when you're being flogged for infractions you don't remember committing. The words of the priests sound hollow against the reality of your existence, and you find yourself going through the motions of faith without actually feeling it, reciting prayers you don't believe, because not reciting them would mark you as suspect. Other workers take a different path. They embrace the brutality, finding a kind of savage pride in their survival. They are the ones who volunteer for the most dangerous duties, who push themselves harder than anyone demands, who compete with their fellow workers to see who can load shells faster or endure more punishment. They wear their scars like badges of honor and count their surviving crew members like trophies. For them, the gun deck is a test, and every day they survive is proof of their strength and worth. They are the ones most likely to be promoted to petty officer positions because the Navy values people who have internalized its brutality and made it their own. And then there are those who simply endure. They don't find meaning in their suffering and they don't embrace it. They just exist, day after day, doing what they must to survive because the alternative is death. And some deep instinct rebels against accepting death, even when death might be the more merciful option. These workers are the majority, the great mass of humanity that keeps the Imperium functioning through sheer, stubborn persistence. They are not heroes or zealots or victims, not really. They are simply people, caught in a system that values their labor more than their lives, and they endure because endurance is what humans do. You're not sure which category you fall into. Perhaps all of them, at different times. Perhaps none of them. Your identity has become fluid, undefined, eroded by the constant physical and psychological assault of life on the gun deck. You remember, dimly, being someone else, someone with dreams and preferences, and a sense of self that extended beyond your function as a loader. But that person feels increasingly distant, like a character in a story you heard once and half forgot. The you that exists now is defined entirely by the chains you pull, and the shells you load, and the aches that never fade, and the fear that never stops. This is who you are. This is all you are. And the worst part is that you're not sure you care anymore. The shift ends, finally, the blessed relief of being dismissed from your station, even though you know you'll be back in a few short hours. You shamble back to the underdecks with the rest of your crew, too exhausted for conversation, barely able to put one foot in front of the other. The mess hall is packed with thousands of workers from other shifts, all of them wearing the same expression of hollow-eyed fatigue. You collect your rations, the usual grey paste that might charitably be called food, and you eat without tasting because your body needs the calories, even if your mind has stopped caring what they taste like. You make your way to the sleeping quarters and collapse onto your bunk. The pallet is thin and uncomfortable, but right now it feels like the greatest luxury imaginable. Around you, hundreds of other workers are doing the same, filling the underdeck with the sounds of bodies settling into rest. Someone is crying softly, trying to muffle the sound in their thin pillow. Someone else is praying, the words indistinct, but the desperate tone unmistakable. Most are simply silent, conserving what little energy they have left for sleep. You close your eyes, but sleep doesn't come immediately. Your muscles are still twitching with remembered effort, and your hands throb with a pain that has become so constant you're barely aware of it anymore. Your mind refuses to quiet. replaying moments from the engagement, the sounds and sights that you wish you could forget, but know you never will. The crushed breech handler, the loose shell rolling across the deck, the face of the worker next to you in the instant before they collapsed. These images will join the collection of horrors you carry with you, added to the pile, until eventually your mind can't hold any more and something breaks. But not tonight. Tonight, you survive. Tomorrow, you'll wake to the bosun's whistle and drag yourself to the gun deck and load more shells. The day after that, you'll do it again, and again, and again, until the day you don't, until you become another casualty report, another number in the logs, another body to be recycled through the ship's systems. That day is coming. You know it's coming. Everyone knows it's coming. The only question is when, and by what specific method of the 1,000 available ways to die on a gun deck, and whether anyone will remember your number when you're gone. This is the life of a macro cannon loader in the Imperial Navy. This is the price paid every day by thousands of forgotten souls, so that the warships of the Imperium can continue their eternal vigil against the darkness. This is the human cost of the Imperium's survival, measured in bodies broken and lives consumed, and suffering so vast it becomes incomprehensible. This is what it means when we say that in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Because war is not just the battles fought by heroes. War is also this, the grinding daily horror of the gun deck, the endless cycle of loading and firing and dying, the reduction of human beings to their most basic function as components in a machine that values efficiency over everything else. And perhaps the most horrifying aspect of all is that this is considered acceptable. The officers who command these ships sleep soundly in their luxurious quarters. The admirals who plan the fleet deployments never set foot on a gun deck. The High Lords of Terror, who make the strategic decisions that determine where these ships go and what they do, have no concept of what their orders actually mean for the people who must carry them out. The Imperium grinds on, consuming lives with mechanical indifference, because this is the only way it knows how to function. This is the system that has kept humanity alive for 10,000 years, and while it's brutal beyond measure, while it treats human beings as consumable resources rather than people with inherent dignity and worth, while it inflicts suffering on a scale that would have been unimaginable in earlier eras of human history, it works. After a fashion, at a cost. The gun deck is a monument to this cost. Every macro cannon speaks with the voice of human suffering. Every shell fired represents not just the destruction it will inflict on the enemy, but the destruction that was inflicted on the people who loaded it. The guns are holy to the Mechanicus because they embody the perfect fusion of human will and mechanical function. But they are unholy in a different sense. Unholy in what they demand of those who serve them. Unholy in the casual way they consume human lives as fuel for their operation. You are part of this machine now. You pull the chains that load the shells, that destroy the enemy, that threatens the Imperium, that press-ganged you into service. The circle is complete, the logic inescapable. You suffer so that others might be protected, and the fact that those others have no idea you exist and wouldn't care if they did is irrelevant. This is your function. This is your purpose. This is the meaning that has been imposed upon your existence, whether you accept it or not. You are a loader, and you will load shells until you can no longer load them. And then you will be replaced by someone else who will do the same. And the great machine will continue its work without pause or reflection or mercy. And in the vast darkness of space, the warships of the Imperial Navy continue their eternal patrol, their macro cannons ready to speak the Emperor's judgment, powered by the bodies and blood and suffering of people whose names will never be recorded in any history, whose sacrifices will never be celebrated in any monument, whose existence will be forgotten the moment they draw their last breath. They are the price of the Imperium's survival. They are the foundation upon which 10,000 years of human civilization has been built. They are the forgotten thousands, The expendable ones, the loaders who keep the guns firing even as they die at the guns. This is their story. This is your story, if you're unlucky enough to find yourself press-ganged into a gun crew. This is the brutal reality that lurks beneath the epic space battles and heroic last stands that define the public face of the Imperial Navy. This is what it actually means to serve, stripped of all glory and romance, reduced to its essential elements, chains and shells and blood and death, repeated endlessly until there's nothing left to give. The gun deck waits for you. It's always waiting. The chains are ready for your hands. The shells are ready to be loaded. The gun is ready to fire. And when you fall, when you finally succumb to the endless catalogue of ways a loader can die, there will be another body to take your place. The machine does not stop. The machine cannot stop, because in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and war requires guns, and guns require loaders, and loaders are the cheapest, most easily replaced component in the entire system. Your life has value only in how it can be expended. Your death has meaning only in how quickly you can be replaced. This is the truth of the gun deck. This is the truth of the Imperium. This is the price that must be paid. And so the shells continue to be loaded. The guns continue to fire. The ships continue their patrol through the darkness. And somewhere in the vastness of the galaxy, another press gang is moving through another underhive, recruiting another batch of workers who don't yet know what awaits them in the gun decks of the Imperial Navy's warships. The cycle continues. The machine grinds on. The Imperium endures. And the price is paid, over and over again, in blood and suffering and forgotten lives, in the cavernous gun decks where the Emperor's wrath is manufactured from human flesh and metal, and the shells that weigh as much as tanks. If you found this glimpse into the brutal reality of the Imperial Navy's gun crews enlightening, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. There are countless other stories to tell from the grim darkness of the far future, tales of suffering and sacrifice that rarely make it into the heroic narratives we usually hear. These are the stories of the forgotten, the expendable, the ones who keep the Imperium functioning through their unremembered labor and unacknowledged deaths. They deserve to have their stories told, even if those stories are almost too horrible to contemplate. Until next time, remember that in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and war consumes us all eventually, whether we're heroes or simply the people who load the guns that the heroes fire.